One of the questions we've been asked a few times in the comment section is, what is that bike back there? It's a YT Jeffsy CF 29. It's a custom build of my own that I've been riding for a little while now, so do you want to have a bit of a look at it? Let's look at the fork first and foremost. Now this is a fork that we've got on test at the moment. It is a Fox 36 2019 version with the new Grip 2 damper with both high and low speed compression adjustment and also high and low speed rebound adjustment. Now this fork is 150 millimeters travel, which is 10 mils more than you'd have on most Jeffsys. They normally come with 140 mils up front on the 2.9er version of the Jeffsy. I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I thought maybe the 150 fork would slacken it out too much, but it hasn't. It feels fantastic. The bottom bracket's a tiny bit higher, which isn't necessarily a bad thing on the rocky trails that we have around here. The 36 chassis is just unbelievable, and I think it's going to be hard to go back to any other fork really. It's so stiff, so precise, and has saved my butt on many occasions already. In terms of the damper in the fork, we have been a little bit reluctant to delve too far into it, to be honest, because it feels so good with the way that we've had it set up already. And when you've got high and low speed rebound as well as high and low speed compression, it becomes a bit of a minefield really. You need to really spend the time to make sure you've got the suspension set up correctly. You don't just want to go in there and start twiddling knobs all over the show. High and low speed compression, that's fine. They're concepts that everyone is familiar with, or most people are familiar with, and we've been dealing with those for a long time on forks. With the high and low speed rebound, it is a little bit trickier. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate between what is a low speed impact and what is a high speed impact, and how those are going to have two different effects. So we found a setting that works for us at the moment, and we've only been moving it 1 or 2 clicks either way from that setting at the moment, just to see how it goes. So a little bit confusing. We're sure there are going to be people out there who will get the most out of it though. For us at the moment, it's probably more adjustability than we personally need for our bike. And whether or not anyone really needs it, who knows? It's a different shock to what you normally find on the Jeffsy as well. I've got a Float X on there. Now this shock has been custom tuned by the very friendly guys over at Mountain Bike Suspension Centre in Sydney. The reason that I wanted to get a custom tune on it is, one, I don't weigh very much, and so I often find myself at the extremes of the adjustability of a lot of shocks. But secondly, the trails that we have around here, around Fly HQ, are rocky. There's a lot of loose rock. There's also a lot of flat drops. So really, you want a suspension setup that is super duper active and is really supple over all those small choppy hits, but then saves some in reserve and is really progressive towards the end stroke, so you're not constantly blowing through all your travel and bottoming out on some of those bigger hits. And that's what we were able to do with this shock. I really can recommend going and getting yourself a custom tune on your shock. It is not just for the pros. It is not just for people who have been riding for a long time. When you think about the way that a bike is put together, you've got some brand manager who rides their local trails, who gets feedback from some riders, pro riders, his or her local crew, and from that they then decide on what the shock tune should be, and they take that to Fox or RockShox or whoever and ask for the tune that they think is best going to suit the bike. However, they cannot possibly cover all bases when it comes to riding styles, rider weights, trail styles, all that kind of stuff, setup preferences, and so there is a lot to be gained by going and getting your shock tuned by someone who knows what they're doing. There's a bunch of different places out there now across Australia who will do it for you. I can highly recommend the guys at Mountain Bike Suspension Centre. They were fantastic. They talked me through everything that they were doing with the shock, and we'll have a little bit more up about the process that I went through there at a later date as well. In terms of the drivetrain, it is a off-the-shelf SRAM GX Eagle drivetrain. I went with this drivetrain because I really liked the range of the 10 to 50 cassette. It's been great in that regard. We're never running out of gears. A lot of people say you don't need a 50-tooth cog out back, and that's true. You don't need a lot of things when it comes to all kinds of tech on a bike, but it is nice to have, and if you've got the gears there, you're always going to use them, and I find myself using that 50-tooth out the back quite a lot. While I really like the range of the GX setup, I found it a little bit finicky, and it's something that a lot of people have remarked on in the past. It is super duper fiddly to try and get it exactly perfect when it comes to the shifting, and although it'll make every shift at the moment, it's got a really nice light and crisp kind of action, you often feel like it is just on the verge of misshifting or skipping out, and sometimes I'm having a little bit of trouble getting it to settle in nicely into that the 10-tooth cog out back as well, despite having twiddled with it and done some adjustment on a couple of occasions. So not all roses there, but overall pretty cool. In terms of the dropper post, I'm running a Pro Koryak ASP dropper post. It is not a post you would have seen too much of, but it's been really reliable. It's only 125mm drop, which is generally okay. Sometimes I'm aware of the fact that it doesn't drop as far as some of the other posts out there on the market, and I've matched it up to a wolf tooth dropper lever because the one that comes with it is complete crap. So you want to really upgrade the lever if you're going to be using one of these Koryak posts. They're really good value for money, and I think it's been really reliable and the performance has been pretty good so far. The tyres that I've got on this bike are also something that I've been testing out. They're a Vittoria Morsa tyre. Now, we hadn't heard of Vittoria making mountain bike tyres. Obviously, they're well established on the road, but when it comes to the mountain bike game, we haven't seen much of them in the past. The tyre is a 2.3 width and obviously in a 2.9 size, but you can get it in a 2.75 as well. What's interesting about this tyre is that it uses a graphene compound, which is something that NASA invented in the Space Wars and as a hair gel. We actually don't know what graphene really is, other than it's a nanoparticle and it seems to be getting put into more and more stuff. But it makes big promises about the durability and grip of the tyre. Now, when it comes to the durability, they seem to be holding up very well. We've only done probably 5 or 6 weeks worth of riding on these tyres so far. The durability seems to be good. A bit of chewing out on the rear tyre, but nothing that's unexpected. The grip is pretty good. It is not on par with a lot of tyres out there that are using a super sticky rubber compound, and on dry, sandy surfaces where there's not a lot for the tyres to bite into, we find them a little bit skatey, and also on wet rock we've had a few hairy moments. But they are very fast rolling. The tread pattern reminds us of a Maxxis Recon tyre, and they carry speed really well. The tread pattern is great in that regard, and in softer soils, especially brown dirts and things like that, they bite in really hard. Loamy stuff or deeper sand, you're going to find heaps and heaps of traction. So that's where these tyres have been a real standout. The weight is pretty good too, around about 930 grams. They sealed up well. The sidewalls seem nice and tough so far as well. So there are some positives. On the negatives, I guess you just need to accept the fact that there's going to be a trade-off between your rolling speed and your out-and-out grip. So that's probably our only criticism of that tyre at this stage. The brakes that I have on this bike, and please excuse the absolute mess of cables out the front at the moment, are Hope E4s matched to the Tech 3 lever. We are doing a shootout at the moment between 3 different 4-piston brakes. I've got the Hopes here, the Shimano XT 4 pistons, and of course the SRAM code RSCs, the latest version of the SRAM codes, which is probably a little bit more of a downhill oriented brake, but we're still sticking it head to head against the Shimano XTs and these Hopes. They're a gorgeous looking brake, these Hopes, so far. This is our first proper ride on them. They feel really lovely. Quite a different lever feel to the SRAMs, which we just took off previously. Lighter, a little bit softer lever feel, but a gorgeous looking brake, and I think that is definitely part of the appeal when it comes to these brakes. Obviously performance is paramount, but you cannot discount how gorgeous they are. The 4 pistons should have heaps of power. We've got a 203 rotor up front and a 180mm rotor out back, and so we're not expecting any worries with brake fade, especially around here. The hills aren't that long in particular, so we think it's going to be just fine. That is about it. So if you've got any more questions about this particular bike or this build, feel free to stick them in the comments, or shoot us an email on crew@flowmountainbike.com, and we'll do our best to answer your questions about the way this Jeffsy has been performing.